or do some type of video in the world that I'm in, if you put something about 5 ways to increase your revenue, you'll have hundreds of views. You'll have hundreds of business owners because they love to talk about revenue and profit and loss. In this particular conversation, Bob and Sally asked me to come in, and although we're probably not out of this recession, and I don't know how long it would be, really, how do we start to position our business really after that, after we start to get back to growing, and what are some things we can do to protect us against the next recession is really kind of the focus. I don't know if you're like me. Right now, I'm kind of at that point where I've figured out how to tread water, and I've figured out where I'm kind of doing things. But now I'm asking myself, every now and then I'll catch myself during the day saying, you know, when times get better, I'm going to make sure I don't do that again, or I'm going to make sure I focus on that. And so that's really what today is kind of about. So I'm going to share with you in the time that I have, just about 20 minutes here, I'll share with you 3 strategies that you can think about when we finally move out of this recession. And this won't be applicable for everybody, but there's something everyone can take away. And then Sally, let's then open it up for questions. I'll give some quick tip hits and kind of go from there. The first strategy that I really want you as business owners to focus on, and I saw this be really powerful coming out of 2008, is to make sure that you're really trying to build your balance sheet. Sally, I think there we go. So the first strategy is to continue to build your balance sheet post-recession. Now, as I said, most business owners always want to talk about revenue and growing profitability and things of that nature. And so I see we've got Craig Lohman on here too. So we know that you know, your profit and loss is always important for a business. Your statement of cash flows and how money goes through your business is important. But your balance sheet, in my opinion, over the years I've consulted businesses, is really what helps you survive when the spigot turns off, which is what we've seen. So in a recession, typically it's kind of a slow crawl, and we all kind of slowly start to see it coming. In this particular case, the spigot shut off for a lot of us very quickly. And the balance sheet is really what gives you the choices to capitalize on opportunities, to be able to make good decisions, and to be able to survive. So one of the things that I want you to think about when you're building your balance sheet is really understanding what goes into it, understanding what kind of assets you have, what kind of liabilities you have, and of course, how much equity you have. When I first started in the commercial banking, back when I was doing that, you know, I had to try to learn how to interpret a balance sheet when I didn't hardly even know how to spell balance sheet. That's my joke for the day. But I had to really try to get in and try to understand, like, what does all of this mean? And there was a book, I think it's still in print if you're readers, there's one that's called Finance and Accounting for Non-Financial Managers. So it's a finance and accounting for non-financial managers. And what it does is it helps explain your income statement and your balance sheet, what goes into it, how to calculate the ratios, and why those ratios are important, which was a big part of helping to consult businesses. But I could also see in that book, it would tell me a little bit about what are some things that I could do to impact that. So if you want a quick read or something like that, focus on that piece. I'll tell you, it's an interesting story. Business owners that really strengthen their business do focus on understanding the numbers that go into their balance sheet. There was about 10, 12 years ago, we were just out of the 2008, 2009 recession, or starting to crawl out of that. And I had a business owner call me, a prospect called me and said, "Hey, Larry, I think I want to switch over to the institution you're with." And I said, "All right." I said, "Well, tell me why is that?" And they said, "Well, my current bank just doesn't get me." That was the answer they gave me. And so I want to talk to you. And so they sent me their financials, and I was able to kind of look them over. And it's amazing that business owners, the stories that they can see inside of their balance sheet and the strength. So I started looking at this, and of course I went out and saw him, and now I get the nickel tour. You ever have the nickel tour where you go out and now I'm visiting the guy's place, and I'm going through his shop, and I'm going through his warehouse, and we get to the back, right to the back of the warehouse, and he gets ready to open up these big steel doors in the back, and he says, "Now here's the problem." And I said, "Well, let me guess. You've got about $1.5 million worth of steel sitting back there that you can't move." And he looked at me and he says, "How did you know?" And I said, "Because you can see it in your financials." And so he opens the door, and sure enough, there's a big pile of steel. Now, how did I know? when you really and Craig, you can jump in on this. I don't know if you guys do this, but I know commercial banking, most commercial banking lenders, here's a good strategy for all of you. Great commercial bank lenders will submit their customers' financials confidentially to a RMA. It'd be a risk management agency, correct, Craig? And what that does is that kind of common sizes everybody's financials in your particular industry, and it actually gives you kind of ratios. I was talking about the ratios on your balance sheet and those types of things. And what it'll do is it'll allow you to be able to compare your business against hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses just like yours. And what ends up happening is then you can develop strategies to be able to build your balance sheet. So in there, I don't know, Craig, are you on, if he's on mute, but there's a high range, correct? Craig Lohman at Lohman Companies. There's a high range, and then there's a medium, and then there's a lower tier. Is that correct?
Sorry about that. You're talking about RMA, the ratios?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, typically they have the different tiers, and then they'll also show averages as well across industries when you're looking at certain industries.
Yeah. So when you're looking at your balance sheet, so when you start there as a business owner, again, a lot of times we're thinking about profit and loss, but what are the decisions that we're doing to kind of build that balance sheet up? So you might look at how much leverage you have, how much working capital, how much cash do you have on hand compared to businesses that do just what you do. And what you really want to sit down is develop strategies post-recession on how do I build my balance sheet to be in that top tier, if that makes sense. And so that's one of the focuses. What you can do is go to your bank. Here's your takeaway for this point. Go to your bank or whoever does your lending and ask them if they have RMA spreads. RMA is what you're after. And really what you'll do is you'll find out what NIAC code or what SIC code, what industry you're in. And what they can do is they can give you that comparison. If you can't get that, if your bank looks at you and goes, I don't know what you're talking about, I would be surprised. You can also get that from like SCORE and SBA will have those numbers. Those are valuable. SBDC, so Small Business Development Resource Center, those organizations will have that. But I encourage all of you as we move on to the next point to reach out to them and understand, if I was to stack my balance sheet against people that in this country that do what I do, how do I stack on particular metrics? And that's where we start to build strategies. Cool. All right, let's move on to the second one. We talked about this a little bit last time, but one of the most powerful things in order to kind of really strengthen your business is during the tough times, we'll typically start to cut things that we don't need. Keeping that strategy going forward, what we're trying to do is improve operational efficiency. So your second strategy is always improve your operational efficiency. It's kind of interesting. I spoke to a business owner last week, and I've heard this for probably the last 15 to 16 years, the same thing. So it wasn't a surprise, but we were talking about how they were going to try to move through this recession, how they were going to try to find revenue, and how they could try to grow and position themselves. And in that particular business, like a lot of us, they have multiple products and services that they sell. So 6 or 7 different services that they would provide. And we were trying to come up with a strategy so that they could try to be able to find some cash flow and be able to kind of move through this in position. And I asked them this question. I said, of all of your products or services, which one is the most profitable? Which one is the most profitable? And it was interesting. Again, it doesn't matter whether it's a product or it's a service that you sell. Which one do you actually make the most money? And it was interesting. They couldn't answer the question. They didn't know. They didn't know which one of their business lines, their product lines were the most profitable. Now, again, that's not uncommon. I've seen that over the last 15 years. But the reality is when we're trying to create operational efficiency and strengthen our business, it's an awesome opportunity for us to look at each one of the products that we sell or processes or whatever that is, and which one do we make the most money? Because what I was trying to do with them is say, if you could take your most profitable product right now, which is your most profitable that you could do right away today? Like, where could you go get some sales today, right in the midst of this recession? And the problem is they couldn't answer that piece. So when we pushed a little further, they came up with something, but unfortunately they don't do a lot of it. So just imagine if I was in construction as an example, and I said, well, on the side, I clean chimneys, right, in Arizona, this is an example, right? And then I say, well, that's my most profitable. We can charge it. It takes some skill, that type of thing. Well, how many chimneys do you clean? Well, I only do 3 a year. Okay. That's not a business in order to be able to help get you through this recession and build from. And so really finding out which ones are the most important. I know that, or the most profitable. I know that in bigger companies, a lot of times I'll see like the, Craig, I know you're on mute, but like the ABCs of accounting, or your activity-based costing, but there's ways in which small businesses can find out which ones make the most. I always tell small business owners, if you're in doubt, ask what overhead costs you could lose if you didn't do a particular function. If you decide, so Sally, think about the chamber as an example. The chamber has many different events, right? And you have many different products. You have many different targets and things of that nature. But from a chamber perspective, you might look in your business and say, hey, this is my best event, right? You could look at it in that regard and say, this is my best event. But what business owners fail to do when they're strengthening their business is they stop to say, but how much time does it take me to make that much money? I see a smile. Do you want to make any comment?
Probably best if I didn't, but you're right. I mean, when you think about how much time goes into it from a staff standpoint, if you weigh that out, sometimes it's not worth even doing.
Yeah.
Some of our smaller events, we put a lot of time into them, and they're of value for our members, but not necessarily a big financial value to the chamber.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, because a lot of times, especially owners of companies will fall in love with that. This is a big item for me. It makes a lot of money. But then Jamie Dimon, I believe, of JP Morgan, not famously, but his belief, and I kind of subscribe to this, that all costs in a business should be assigned to something, so that you're really getting a good picture of really what is really making you the most money. Because in times of crisis like we are right now, it's easy to say, look, I don't make any money doing that, and I'm going to cut that, or I'm going to look at unprofitable customers and I'm not going to focus on that. But the question is, why do we continue to do that when times are good? I'll tell a quick funny story, but my youngest son plays travel football, or did for a while there. And we would go to some of these games. He was on a really good team, and they would beat some of these teams, 42-0 as an example. And we'd be driving home, and that's when dad and son get to have that conversation around the game and that type of stuff. And one day I told him, I said, the problem with a 42-0 win is the fact that you don't learn anything from it. What did you really learn? You dominated so much that you were just oblivious to either a missed tackle or something along that lines. And I see some of you shaking your heads. When times are good is when all of a sudden we can become really accepting of things that really aren't making a lot of money. And what I tell organizations a lot of times is put a timeline on it. If you think you're going to grow it, put a timeline. If there's a product or service that you offer that just isn't cutting it, then why keep it? And that's how you can start to strengthen your business and whatnot. So cool. Thank you for filling in on that, Sally. But that is a great way to look at it, especially a business like yours and like many of ours that have multifaceted pieces. The third strategy that I'm going is kind of near and dear to me because it's a little bit of my background, but I'm talking to a lot of business owners now, and I see this. The third strategy to strengthen your business is have your banking in place before a recession hits. Okay. Now I'm going to be careful how I say this, but again, I can say it a little bit because I've had a background in it. But last time we talked, when we were talking about revenue, we were talking about that's when the PPP program and some of those others were rolling out. And I know I hear from some people that they're a little frustrated. Again, that they had to put a big program together in a short amount of time, so there's going to be kinks with that. But here you're at a time when some people really need that money. Or people are saying, it's been a month and I need the money, that type of thing. And this is not the time to be relying on someone when you don't have things in place. And so there's an interesting statistic that was done by US Bank, a study, And what they found is 82% of businesses fail generally because of lack of cash flow. And so my question for you, and what I want you to think about, is why would you not, with your bank, have the tools in place before a recession hits to be able to protect yourself? Now, I'm going to tell you that even when I was in banking, and now even then, and even when I consult clients now, I am a big proponent of not having debt. I'm just in business trying not to have any debt where at all possible, not using revolving lines just to get by and things of that nature, but having those tools in place when that time comes. I think now when I watch like financial networks, you know, you see big companies, even GM and Southwest and just bigger companies are, you know, you'll hear right away they're drawing down on their revolving lines. I mean, they're doing that right away. You know, obviously they see the need, they can see the projection, that type of thing, and they're drawing on those. This is not the time to be going to a bank like the story I told earlier and saying, I'm in trouble or my bank doesn't get me and now I want to try to move. That's always a bit of a challenge and stuff like that. So one of the things I tell people is, you know, as long as you understand where your balance sheet is, and we kind of talked a little bit about the revenue, all of that ties in. If you can tie that to the projection of where you are going forward, what does the next 12 to 18 months look like? You can really then start to understand, how much credit do I need if I had to? A lot of times people, again, 82% of them fail because of lack of cash flow or access to cash. Why not have those things in place, that type of thing, so that they're ready there and be able to draw on those. One of the cautionary things, this is probably the old banker in me, but there's many reasons to have a line of credit in place. There's many what they call borrowing causes, and those are if sales are going through the roof, sometimes that creates a borrowing need. If there's a change in terms, maybe your supplier says, I want to be paid quicker, you know, than before, that can cause a borrowing need. But understand this, that when you're in the middle of a recession and you're going to draw on your line either to get by, understand that that debt is still obligated, right? And so drawing and having a purpose to say, look, this is going to bridge me until a time when I get that is very powerful. Sometimes I always used to counsel businesses that make sure that a line of credit, if you have that, or if it's a business card, is not out there just to make things go smoothly. You should challenge yourself every time you draw on a bank line or a credit card or whatever that happens to be, but having that stuff in place is really, really what helps. That type of thing. I saw some comments. There are some people that are frustrated with the PPP process, and it's taking a long time. I mean, even some of the cash that comes to us as individuals is taking a long time. And so my point of this is, don't be in a position going into the next recession when not having those things in place. Okay. Sally, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give the quick hits here. Some quick hit ideas, because I know there's a diversity of people on this call and not all of those strategies fit for everybody, but I want to throw out just a few more if you all are jotting notes, if that's for you. One of the things that I counsel clients to, and it's very helpful for even in my world, is sometimes think about taking your strongest clients in the good times and try to incent them to more longer term contracts. This is a way to kind of strengthen yourself during a recession. If you think about it, if instead of me doing a 6-month job for somebody, if you take some of my stronger clients, maybe I'll take less money for a 2-year contract, meaning that recessions a lot of times can last between 2 quarters and I think it's 2 quarters to maybe 6 or 8 quarters, but having some type of consistent cash flow from a good paying customer, a bigger customer, is not a bad strategy. So think about that. Here's something that I'm learning to do. I'm not coming from a wise place on this one. I'm coming from a place right now, and it's learn to sell and manage virtually. I never would have thought that was the piece. I'm being vulnerable, Hilbert. That's the piece that I missed. I diversified my revenue streams. I knew my profitability in each one of those, like for my business. But the reality is I never thought much. I was a face-to-face guy. So I never really thought about doing much of this virtually. So just live and learn. I guess I'll come out of it better because of it. The third quick idea, I like this one. I think that every business owner, to really strengthen your business, should really have a board of advisors around you. A board of advisors. Who are the people that you go to, not only to talk to, sometimes we just need people to counsel to, but to bounce ideas off. But here's what I have found tried and true. Most businesses that came out of the 2008 recession typically had a group of advisors around them that really was designed to protect them from themselves. So think about the guy that I told you, Brian, who bought all the steel. When I asked him, I said, well, why did you buy it all? And he had some notion that there was going to be a steel shortage in 2007 and the prices were rising. So he bought a whole bunch of it. And then, of course, as we all know, he was tied to the construction industry. So in 2008 and 9, his business just collapsed. Having somebody to talk to around that, a board of advisors, is something that I'm a huge proponent of. I do it myself. I encourage all business. Another quick hit, I talked about this, just a quick recap of last meeting, which people really liked, and it's find the leakage in your pipeline. Great businesses that when we get out of this recession, you're growing. You remember I said we don't always recognize the unprofitable things, or we don't always recognize the problems when things are going good. This is the time to really go into your pipeline, whether you're the salesperson or you have a sales staff, and ask, where am I losing deals? Really tracking in there, like from, let's say, a contact to meeting, or meeting to presentation, or presentation to close. Where am I losing deals? Because during the times that are good is an ideal time for you to work with either yourself or your sales staff to improve their skills and to be able to become the most efficient. And then when that cash flow starts coming in, then that's when you make decisions on your balance sheet. See, it all starts to tie together. And so this is the time, find that leakage in your pipeline, because that's, okay, I'll just say it because I've been around sales professionals my whole life, but in great times, that's when your sales staff gets the laziest, because stuff comes to them easiest. And so right now you've got salespeople that are really trying to become salespeople and really trying to do some things. That is the time to really improve. The last one that I talk to a lot of times, and this may not apply to everybody, but look at, in good times, it's a good time to look at your trade terms. And by trade terms would be, how fast are you collecting your receivables? So how long are you extending your payable? There's a number of those things. But where this gets really important, again, in good times, we don't care as much because the cash flow is coming in and we don't watch that. But when you look at like some of your receivable times, if you're not getting paid, if you got to pay your suppliers in 30 days, but you're not getting paid for 60, there's a gap. And not only in good times does that limit your growth, because it takes a lot of cash to do that, but in bad times, that's the fastest that gets hit. So always taking your receivables as an example, and how do I speed that up? Can I offer credit cards? Can I do things electronically? Can I put something on my website to make it easy for them to pay? Those types of things, and slide that forward. How can I delay what I have to pay and things of those nature? There's a really good story, Dell Computers, I'll get the numbers wrong, but Dell Computers in the early years was in a lot of trouble because they weren't getting paid on things for, I think it was almost 90 days. And they brought a chief financial officer in that not only brought that down to zero, but actually brought it to a negative in terms of the fact that they were getting paid before they even produced something. And that provided a lot of cash for Dell, which helped them to grow in the early years and things of that nature. And we can do it at the size of our business. How do we speed stuff up at all times? Okay. All right, Sally, I've been going here for a little while. Hopefully everybody stayed with me. We didn't lose anybody. But why don't we just open up for questions, or if anybody wants to talk about some successes they've had or things that they do, I'm open to anything.
I think we're going to have Bob ask a few questions that we have come in. So we'll start with that. And then if anybody has anything that maybe this triggers that, a question or two, jump in.
Yeah, please ask away.
Bob, you're muted.
You sound great though.
Muted. I'm still muted. I'm always muted. Anyway, if you do have a question for Larry, please put it in the chat over on the right side, and I'll get to that. Larry, the first question today, you spoke about business development strategy and driving revenue to the balance sheet. What is the biggest mistake you see businesses making in this process?
Well, I see a number of mistakes. But one of the biggest things that I see with business owners, and this ties today's together and actually last when we did the one before, is most business owners don't have a clear-cut strategy in order to grow their revenue. So they really don't understand the value chain that they provide from the moment they start, maybe inception with a customer, and how they in each particular step provide additional value all the way through in order to define themselves. So I'll give you a really good example. If think about McDonald's, right? McDonald's is an easy one because we've all probably eaten there. But in my opinion, you can argue with me, but they have the tastiest fast food fries, right? And McDonald's really focuses on the end of that being that they are quality and they are tasty and they're hot and they're fresh. That's their thing, right? So you go to McDonald's, you're going to order their fries. But if you really do a deep dive into McDonald's strategy, as an example, that value chain goes all the way back to the farmers they select for the potatoes and probably even before that. So if McDonald's has a bad batch of fries for you, they're not going to sit there at the counter and blame Farmer Joe in Idaho, are they? I mean, they have to make sure through their strategic process and their value chain that everything along the way is designed to end with that product in mind. And the quality of that particular product. And so everything from the farmers they use to how they haul it, to how they process it and how that's handled. All at the end of that is that they know exactly what their target is. Everything's lined up. And this is what business owners, Bob, missed to the point of your question. So if you think about it, McDonald's, that whole value chain creates an experience for some of us. Maybe it's just a quick ride through the drive-through. For me, in my younger years, and when my boys were little, I could take them and we could go eat the fries and the burger, right? And then they could play on the swing set. And that value chain that they created that experience for me. But that same Saturday night, I'm not going to take my wife out for our anniversary to McDonald's, right? For fries. So yeah, you hope not. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have stayed. Yeah. So the point of that story is that a lot of times business owners don't know what that real end result is. And so when you don't know what that is at the end and you don't have a value chain that all lines up to create that experience, you're not as profitable as you can be. And so, Bob, one of the biggest mistakes that people make in business is that they assume that they want to strive to just be number one or number two in their area, or I want to be the best at this. And the reality is your focus should always be on being the most profitable in your industry. And that's the mistake that businesses make.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I actually did get a question that kind of ties to that. But before I throw this question out, at the beginning of your presentation, you had mentioned a particular book that was not your book, because we've posted that in the chat. But if you have that name and you can repeat that, that would be great. But the next question is, you talk strategically about the cost, but how do you affect price when your competition is selling the same stuff at a lower price?
Yeah. So to answer the first part of the question, the book, if I remember, it's been a number of years, was Finance and Accounting for Non-Financial Managers. The key was non-financial managers. I remember that because it was really for me. So I wasn't a CFO. I wasn't an accountant, from that standpoint, but it was Finance and Accounting for Non-Financial Managers. Okay. And then Bob, you were asking about, okay, so we talked about cost and watching cost, but how do we create value, and how do we just jotted down your price, right? How do we improve the price? Was that the question?
Correct.
Yeah, when you got people. So one of the things, I'll tying to that, so I gave the McDonald's example, but a lot of times making sure, one of the best strategies, there's many strategies you can use to differentiate, but one of them is something that I always give credit to a guy by the name of Michael Porter, way back, a Harvard business instructor, who talked about trade-offs and understanding in your value chain that if you want to be different than your competition, you may serve the same target market, but you have to have something that's a trade-off. You have to have something that you do that's totally different. You may look the same and you may serve the same demographic, but there's something that you do to help you differentiate. And that's where businesses can really start to garner on price or start to have a price differentiator. So I always like to give an example. like today, when you look at like Home Depot and Lowe's, at the end of the day, the businesses look very similar, don't they? Right? It's kind of a do-it-yourself warehouse type shop. But when they first started, and still today, if you look at the subtle nuances of their value chain, it's totally different. So Home Depot, when they first started, it was the big warehouse. It was for the do-it-yourselfer. But they had this problem. They had these big warehouses, and people were wandering around going, I don't know what to do. So what they did is they hired ex-contractors, people that had gotten out of the business, to be clerks and people that walked around. And that was the value that they offer. So that person could instruct a guy like me, okay, here's how you fix a faucet. That was their value chain. Well, when Lowe's came across, they had the big warehouse, right? They served the do-it-yourselfers, but Lowe's had more of a focus in that value chain on fashion, or they had more displays. If you go into Lowe's, they'll have more displays where you can order it and pack those up. And you can even argue a little bit with IKEA that's a little more furniture. But my point to this is that what they do is they serve the same type of customer, which you will with your prospects, but you do it in a different manner. And that's where like a Lowe's and a Home Depot are totally different, but they'll look the same on the outside. That answers the question, I think.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Our next question, if you can kind of articulate a little bit, what is the ideal ratio that bankers like to see for current assets and current liabilities?
That is a question that is going to differ based on industry. So that sounds like a true consultant answer, right? It depends. But obviously you want something over one. Generally, when you think about it, if your ratio is really designed, if you got a ratio of 1.5, it means you have a $1.50 in what they would call current assets, cash, inventory, things of that nature, for every dollar in current debt that's due. That's what to answer that question. The answer to that is really the RMA. That's why I always come back to that RMA. So go to your score, go to your SBDC, go to your banker, because what it'll do, it'll say somebody in the printing service versus somebody in the construction business versus somebody in the consulting business, somebody who sells bundt cakes, they see Jan there. Anybody like that, it'll show you in there how you compare to them, and that's your benchmark. And what you strive to be is in that top tier, if at all possible.
Thank you, sir. So next question is kind of a little bit of an expression, but maybe you can give some advice on this. There's sort of a frustration with the bank's attitude in regards to ROI. How can you manage that as a somebody looking to get some support?
Yeah, so I might have to have somebody kind of reach out and clarify. So when you're talking about ROI, you're talking about the return on the investment. And so in all my years being around bankers, I've never had a bank ever get too hung up on ROI. I'll see sometimes, ROA, they'll talk a little bit about that, which is your return on assets. But rare is it that I see a bank get that in depth in that turn. A return on investments, in my opinion, is more of not an internal calculation, but it's something that I'm looking at within a business if I'm going to take on a project. So if I say to myself, look, I'm going to invest $10,000 worth of capital because I want to grow this particular market, what do I think the return on my investment would be? Now, the only time, Bob, if I've answered that, and I'll give my contact information for anybody to circle back, but the only time that I would really have to justify that to a bank is if I was going to them for credit to help finance that endeavor. So I need to build a building, right? As an example, here's what I think that will yield me. That would be the only time you would converse on that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is in relation to the fact that you talked a lot about building a board of advisors. What are your suggestions on where you would find people for a board of advisors?
Yeah. So the people that for me personally, the people that I put in my board of advisors are not friends and they're not family. I'll just start with that, because sometimes family and friends will tell you what you want to hear. This board of advisors is not designed for that. So like for me, I have one individual who is an individual who does some nonprofit work, and I do that because just from a story standpoint and getting the story out, and I advise if I've got something. And when I go to lunch with that individual, that's what we talk about. I've got another individual on my board of advisors that was just like me, left the corporate world after a long time, had an idea, build a business, and is scaling that business to a national business. And so that person is on my board of advisors. And so when I go to lunch with Tracy, he knows that that's what we're going to be talking about, right? I'm not going to be talking to him about some other goofy stuff. It's going to be around something around building that. So my point is, when you're looking for the advisors, what you have to know, and you know your value add, and you want to know how you're going to grow, if you want to build more franchises or whatever the case is, you have to find somebody who's built and added franchises. Or if you want to grow a particular product line, whatever that happens to be, you've got to find somebody that's been there. There's a saying that I always tell, and because I do a speaker, you know, we never steal anything. We just copy, right? Or whatever. Well, this guy told me this story one time, and it was really powerful. I love this. He goes, the best advice I can give you in business is to never ask anybody who hasn't done it before. Never ask advice from somebody who hasn't done it before. And so the board of advisors is designed, to the point of that question, to be somebody who has done it before, at a place where you are in your business. That's who you find.
So just a quick reminder for everybody, if you do have a question for Larry, you are welcome to post it into the chat. I'm happy to read it to him. I have gone ahead and posted links to the Amazon listings for both Larry's book and for the Finance and Accounting for Non-Financial Managers book, so you can grab those if you'd like. And Larry, if you want to give everybody your contact information real quick, we'll see if we get any more questions.
Yeah, so there may be a question you think about or something that comes up after the fact. That we did this last time and people reached out to me, and that's just fine. So you can email me at boilingfrogdevelopment@gmail.com. That's my direct one, boilingfrogdevelopment@gmail.com. And you can also find me out on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn really easy under Larry Young. You'll see my mug on there. But that's the easiest way to reach out. And then I'll share my direct cell phone with you. But I'm around to answer questions, things that maybe you were not afraid to ask or something. But the key component in this is really strengthening your business when times are good. That's really the focus. Yeah.
I think we have a couple of comments real quick from Mr. Craig Lohman. Mr. Lohman.
Thanks, Bob. Larry, thank you for this session. Great stuff. A couple of comments I just want to take from a different side, not from the banking side, but the building the balance sheet and the getting your banking relationship put in place ahead of time, I think go hand in hand. We work with all kinds of different businesses, some large that have, lots of employees and inventory and equipment, et cetera, and some small that are consultants that may not have any of those things. And so the balance sheet is different for each one of them and what that looks like. And it can be very challenging for them to understand what that means. And one of the things that I've seen many times is that people will manage their business to minimize tax. And I'm sure, Larry, I see you nodding your head, but a lot of times businesses will take their income and everything they're doing and pull it out of the business altogether. And so their balance sheet ends up being very limited in the business itself. Whereas personally, it may help minimize taxes and it may do some other things, but it doesn't allow for them to create that opportunity to work with a bank when there are more challenging times to say, hey, look, I've not, I don't just pull everything out of the business. This is an operating business. It's viable. We're trying to build this so it can manage through good times and bad. And when you do that, you end up making yourself more bankable in a lot of aspects. And then the other thing is that just from a business owner myself is it's always good to have more than one banking relationship. And you should always have that in place. You may have your primary bank that you work with, that you have your operating accounts with, et cetera. But in times like this, it's very obvious with the PPP loan that was put out by the SBA bank, and various banks said, hey, we'll only accept our own customers to apply for. That if you would have had a relationship set up with one or two other banks, possibly besides your main one, you would have some other avenues to go down and be able to move a little quicker for that. Larry, I don't know, thoughts on that?
Yeah. So what I've always enjoyed about Craig is Craig and I speak the same language in terms of helping counsel business owners to build their balance sheet and profit and loss and whatnot. I'll admit, Craig, for years when I was in the banking world, I was taught to do the opposite. It's better to have everything with one bank and then that type of thing. But the reality is, Craig is exactly right. And you see that now at times like this, where, okay, maybe my main bank can't help me with, where I need it and whatnot. I had mentioned one of the keys is not switching your bank, at a bad time. But there are times, and I was a part of the recipient of that. There were times when a bank just didn't understand what a business owner was trying to accomplish. And maybe I, for some reason, was able to. And so, not that you can't switch during a bad time, but you just want to make sure that it's well thought out. And I think having those several relationships, it doesn't have to be a ton of them, but you usually, as Craig said, you have a main one, and then you maybe have some that you do some things with so that you have a go-to in a relationship. And I'll lastly say to that, have a relationship with somebody there, somebody that you can go to coffee with or you can talk to or Zoom chat, so. Good point.
Okay, I'll go ahead at this time and turn it back over to Sally. Thank you.
Does anyone have any last questions for Larry?
Sally?
Yes.
Just
Rich?
a comment. This is Rich Adams. Just a comment. I'm familiar with that book, and I appreciate that Larry brought it up. Highly, highly recommend it. I read it probably 15 years ago, maybe. And in fact, I've given a copy to a couple of friends over the years, so can't recommend that book anymore. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich. Anyone else? Craig, thanks for your input there. That's helpful. Larry, any last comments?
Yeah, I'll just leave you with this. I understand that I know this is a diverse audience and in terms of the different types of businesses. And so some stuff is more applicable to others and whatnot. But if it's for you, take me up on my offer. You can send me an email if you just have a question or something on something we covered. But the focus today, what I saw in the 2000 recession, I saw it in 2008, and I'm seeing it now. But the companies that made great decisions during bad times helped position them for growth. Businesses that made great decisions in great times around their balance sheet and their business are the ones that survive the bad times. And I've seen that for 3 recessions now, and I see companies doing that today. You can do this. And when we get through the other side of this, wherever this is, we're going to have the ability to build those up. But take me up on my offer, boilingfrogdevelopment@gmail.com, or like I said, catch me message me on Facebook, things of that nature, and I'll try to answer any question I can for you. Thank you, Sally, for letting me do this.
Of course. We'll probably talk Larry into coming back in a couple of weeks on a new topic because he's got lots of things that he can offer us. Wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to be on the call this morning. And Larry, of course, thank you again for all your time that you dedicate to not just the chamber, but to our members. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for inviting us.
You bet. Thank you. Bye.